Hi, I'm responding to the video in question, and you made two arguments in your video, one of which I wanted to respond to that I thought was kind of ridiculous. You made the assertion that naturalists and scientists engage in the gap theory as much as those people who are theists who do the God of the gap. And my understanding of the God of the gap is that every time there's a space that can't be explained, that science hasn't been able to explain yet, we take that and we say, well, then that must be what God is creating, or God must be causing that. And then when that thing is explained, they simply move over to another gap. A really good example of that would be in the fossil record, where you've got this animal here and you've got this animal here, and they are morphologically very similar. And the Christians will say, well, what about the space in between? You've got a missing link in quotation marks here. And as soon as somebody finds something in the middle of there, they simply move over to the gap that's in between those and says, well, what about the missing link there? So it's an endless sort of thing where there are always going to be gaps in knowledge, and if every time there's a gap in knowledge you use that as a statement that there's a God must be out there, or why would this be happening? It can't be explained any other way. Well, it can't be explained yet, right? Well, you said that naturalists do this when every time there's a gap, they automatically assume that there's a natural reason for it. Well, come on now, don't be silly. There's a very big difference between taking a gap and attributing it through assumption to something you have never proved exists, and which there is not a shred of evidence exists. That is very different than taking a gap and attributing it to a general category of investigation about stuff that does exist. We know nature exists, right? We know that the world, so far that we have studied it, has natural laws, and we know that it has natural laws that don't change. We don't suddenly go out tomorrow and find that things are falling up. The law of gravity is just that, a law. So we're discovering how the universe works, and we discover naturally how it works and how it works on its own with apparently no help from anywhere else. We've never been able to find anything that seems to work but seems to have some kind of missing variable, and even then most of those missing variables are found. Lots of missing variables out there still, but there's no reason to believe that we won't find them the way we always have. Nature as an assumption for a gap has a really good track record, because all of the gaps that have been filled so far have been filled by natural explanations. Now that doesn't mean we'll be able to explain all the gaps through natural explanations, but it means that until there's one gap that we can absolutely prove is attributable to a God, God's got a batting average of 0. Again, there's something really, really weird about your argument that somehow nature is an assumption that's the same assumption as God. No. That's crazy. Nature isn't an assumption at all. It's derived from actual experience, from things we can actually see. It's empirical. God is something that somebody pulled out of their ass. It has no reason to exist except for social reasons, except because it makes us feel good. If you want to know why God exists and why he exists in a certain way, you're asking a psychological, sociological question. You're not asking a physics question. We shouldn't expect there to be a God of the gaps any more than we should expect there to be a Santa Claus of the gaps, or a boogeyman of the gaps. We could take anything. We could say the Thor of the gaps, or the Zeus of the gaps. We could take any imaginary character and claim that it was somehow responsible for anything that we haven't figured out yet. Just a thought. I'd really like it if you'd respond. Most people don't have the guts to respond to me somehow. I don't know what that's about. But this is Skeptic Sage, reminding everybody that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I wish everybody peace.